All right, folks. Welcome back to this is episode number 5. We are live, and we've got a lot of stuff to talk about. Well, really one thing to talk about, which is KARP's latest interview. So we got 2 interviews over the past week. We got the Davos interview that I reacted to today. Definitely check that out on the Daily Counter episode. I think last 10 minutes of analysis. Quite frankly, I think it was some of the better analysis I've done on KARP talking because of the stuff he said. And so it gave me a lot to think about. And hopefully that was very valuable to you guys. Obviously, there's a lot more of that interview to break down. Probably we'll be doing that over the next couple of weeks. Palantir Weekly tomorrow. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about. Today, we got the Axios Summit, where KARP speaks at pretty much at every Davos, or most of them, collaborations, and he's there as well. So 14 minutes. Shout out to David. His Twitter's in the description. He supercut the entire thing, and we're going to be reacting to it. I have not like seen this at all. I haven't even seen clips. I've like purposely made myself not watch the clips. And apparently KARP said some wild stuff. KARP goes off at one point. That's what I heard. He says Palantir is a $60 billion company. That's what I heard as well. He just starts saying a lot of stuff, right? And so I think it'll be really exciting to kind of see what he talks about and what he says. But I'm also just like on edge because I have no idea what the guy's going to say. Sorry to not streaming on X. I totally forgot that to press the X button. Dude, I feel like I've been good at it, and then sometimes you forget. So yeah, everyone who's watching, you're here on YouTube, not here on X. But let's tweet out that we'll do that in a little bit later. Good evening, Crossroads, Big Billy, Meta Mike, Cameron Vincent, Mario Luna. KARP said he thinks Palantir is going to be 60 billion. Yeah, I'm very surprised he put a number on that as well. That's a 2x from now, which is not that crazy to say he could double, but usually CEOs never talk about the stock or the price. So really interesting that he ended up doing that. And let's discuss it. Let's discuss it now. And talk about what happened. So are you guys ready? I'm ready. David Carbut, this is Farzad's editor, awesome guy. He put up the supercut. Here it is. I'll be stopping it in between when he says something. What was so funny, we were just talking about on Twitter just now, is Crossroads said, I want a version with the ums and uhs. And it was so hilarious to me. Because literally, I think Enrique also said, yeah, I want that version. Then I responded like, yeah, I appreciate no ums or uhs, but I kind of like the ums or uhs. And so, yeah, now this is the version with no ums or uhs, but we're so deep as Palantir investors that we want the ums or uhs from KARP because they're iconic, getting the ums or uhs. So here it is. I've not seen this yet at all. It's starting fresh. I'll be reacting it in between. We'll probably end here around 8:10-ish, so we're not going to go too long, but we're going to react to what he has to say. And let's get into it. And Enrique retweeted that version. Okay, hold on. Let me see if maybe we react to the other version. Just because the uhs and ums are like important, like it kind of. Oh, he retweeted the uhs and ums of what KARP was saying, the edits of it. Okay, gotcha. All right, well let's go back to the regular one we were watching. All right, here we go. This is the official one. And let's see what we've got with Alex KARP.
Well, the real source of instability, I think, in the world right now, the economic instability, is almost all the real providers, I'm sure there are exceptions, almost all the companies that are adopting AI, not as like a form of self-pleasuring, but as an operational, are actually in America. And this is even more true on the battlefield. You have a huge disjunction where, I spent half my life in Europe. I wrote my PhD in German. On my father's side, they were Alt-Allemand for 900 years. You have this huge disjunction. So that in America is a lot of the GDP growth is going to be powered by software that works. Software is transformational. What we call AI, not just large language models, and your ability to implement them. And that's going to fall probably to a very small number of people. So a lot of GDP growth, very small number of people profit. So that leads to dislocations in the US. The dislocation, I'm in favor of fighting and unifying the West. The dislocation between America and Europe is the startup scene here is anemic, and the real growth in providers are in America. There's another thing which is particularly disadvantageous, which is the idea, not throwing shade on any startups, but most people who actually make money on AI are going to already be established people implementing AI in various forms. So strong military gets stronger, strong software companies get stronger. People who are in a weaker position get much weaker. So that's then on the battlefield, there's these stats that are crazy. 84% of the top 50 tech companies in the world are American. That's okay. Imagine what that's going to be in 10 years. It's going to be 90%. 95%.
Why is that?
The thing that, and I've been yelling almost every European leader you've ever met, I've yelled at in private. And I've said the same thing over and over again.
And from my, watching of KARP, yeah, he's been saying this whole thing about the US is the best of software. He's been really steadfast on this argument.
We're modeling this as intelligence. I spent my graduate school in Germany. French people think I speak French. It's much more like building a rock band. This is a band thing. And it's just, if you're building a rock band and the rock band happens to produce technology, America's very good at building rock bands. And part of it is you need a narrative. Part of it is, there's a religious element. We're Calvin. We see a unification of good and success. My Lutheran brethren, or success is obviously not linked to you've done something right. So
you're saying the Europeans are the Lutherans.
Well, I mean, there's Lutherans, but Germanic culture is basically Lutheran. I mean, we have the Swiss, it's a huge in contradistinction. It's a Calvinist culture. Basically, we have the Dutch, they're Calvinist. But as a generalization, we associate moral integrity and winning as being intertwined. We're very good at playing in groups, we're not as focused on the person is smarter and stealing, not sharing information. And then we're very focused. For 10 years, people would yell at us at Palantir, you're not a company, you're a cult. And what I would throw back at companies now is you're not a cult.
Yes, 1000%. I'm writing that down right now as I'm taking notes. Yes, dude. Yeah. Why you need to create a cult? You have to. Shit, this channel, it's a cult. Like, you gotta have a cult, dude. A cult is the only thing in the competitive environment for attention today that sustains longevity. And we're talking about enterprise software like Palantir. If you create a cult of people that actually care about the product, they will work their asses off because they believe in something, even if they're not making as much money as if they worked in Google. Like, I think a lot of people in this channel, they believe in the channel's success. They want me to win. They know I'm not the smartest investor, but they want me to get better. And it's a journey, it's a process. And like all of this is a learning process, and it requires people actually being committed, which means you actually have to form relationships. I actually have to respond to comments. I have to be part of that cult and that community and enjoy that process. And I think no one bleeds Palantir more than KARP because he enjoys that process so much.
Are believers. We have these products we built that are now decisive on the battlefield. Our US commercial product is inarguably the most successful actual implementation of these things. We have a terrible sales force. We're growing so much. We have someone here. I was like, sorry, you can't leave America anymore. We have to rebuild the whole company. He's really upset because he wants to ski and meet nice people. Sorry. And you can do it in America, but it's
real quick on that. He says we have a terrible sales force, but we're growing so much we have to rebuild the company. Okay, I'm just going to write that down. I have a lot to say on that. But let's keep going.
And then it's compounding this thing, we're always critiqued for being artificial, but you could also say we're adaptive. So you try 50 things, they work, they move on. It compounds into GDP advantage. If you just rough math, these are just rough math numbers, but US GDP grew 60%. California GDP of 61 to 91 was like 160% rough numbers, 110% in the last 30 years. You could see California's GDP going up to 200. Of course, it only goes to a small number of people. What's going to happen in France and Germany? Like, how are you going to support the education I had in Germany? 10% GDP growth. And then on the military front, we've got to start actually working together. We have all these things. Why aren't we sharing them? Why can't they be shared? So it's just this massive dislocation after this. But it is really, the experience of dislocation is going to be very different for US, very different from right now. The purpose of Palantir is to fight for the West. And so I really want Europe to get its act together. But part of getting its act together is we can't just continue lying, half lies, we have to actually talk about these issues and argue with each other, as opposed to, yes, we all believe I believe in climate. I believe in fighting xenophobia. Okay, we all believe in this. Now, can we talk about some things we disagree on? And like really talk about what is it going to mean when America has all the GDP growth? And yes, sure, we have these crazy political situation. Couldn't be crazier. Crazy political situation and GDP growth. That's much better than nice political situation and no GDP growth. Try that one on for size while having a world-class education. It will never work.
So Alex, you're saying the U.S.
I want to play that again real time. He said crazy GDP growth, but crazy. I think he said crazy world, good GDP growth is better than no GDP growth, but not crazy world.
With each other, as opposed to, yes, we all believe I believe in climate. I believe in fighting xenophobia. Okay, we all believe in this. Now, can we talk about some things we disagree on? And, and like really talk about what is it going to mean when America has all the GDP growth? And it's, yes, sure, we have these crazy political situation. Couldn't be crazier. Crazy political situation and GDP growth. That's much better than nice political situation and no GDP growth. Try that one on for size while having a world-class education. It will never work.
So Alex, you're saying the U.S. is on track to having almost all the innovation growth.
Well, we're at 84% of the top 50 startup of tech people now. This is basically pre-AI. What do you think is going to happen? My company is worth between 35 and $40 billion. I'm pretty optimistic we're going to continue to grow and get bigger. Okay, at $60 billion, you are on that list. Okay, it's very likely we'll be on that list.
Okay, so the lawyers were ready to shoot themselves when he said that, but he did say it, folks. So that would be a stock price of around $35, talking about $40. Look, obviously he's not implying it's gonna happen. He's just saying, given the macro political trends, and I have a lot to say about this actually in the context of AI exposure, but that's cool. He said it. Even though lawyers, they want to kill themselves right now, but he said it.
Any one of the products we built would be the #1 startup in Germany. Any one of them. We have 5. Our least successful product would be, so it's, and if you are,
Alex, you're one of the great entrepreneurs in history, a great startup investor. Now you're one of the giants. As we look at AI, what is the opportunity for venture-backed startups versus the giants?
I'm actually very aligned with the venture community. I spent all my life hating the venture people because obviously there's a lot to hate, but I'm very aligned with them on Israel stuff right now because they know it's a strong tech company and I believe they're a part of the West and we should fight for them. But the companies that are doing well or in intermediate and large are going to get almost all the value. I would be very careful if you're considering going to a small AI company. Think about it a lot.
How do you feel about the big getting bigger?
Bigger. I'm actually an economic progressive. So I think the real issue is, well, what do we do to take care of the people who aren't participating? But I think it's a fact that the big and the intermediate big are going to get much bigger. But I mean, so there's always a tendency, and you'll see this, what you'll see in the US tech community is it's like half lies that somehow turn you into a product that, don't make any sense. And you notice that you're being a little more miserable, but they kind of work. Or you'll find people that bend their moral narrative. So what I'm doing is good. So I know what Palantir's doing is crucial to the world, especially on the battlefield. And I love the American GDP story because I, in all modesty, think there's not much good in this world without America being strong. Okay. However, it is clearly a problem for America and every other country that all the money basically is going to go to a couple players. And we have a societal problem. How do you make sure everyone else has teeth and health and education and things that actually give people an opportunity? That is a really big societal problem. And talking about like all sorts of things that in my view make no sense, like weird permutations of identity politics, is not going to fix the problem.
Alex, when you talk about America being strong, how does the US win against China?
America spends less than 1% on AI in the military. In America needs to spend at least 1% on AI enhanced battle systems. And every year, or at least every 6 months, in my view, you should add another point. And then it's very important to look at which programs are working, which software is proven on the battlefield. Basically, in business, people forget a banality. You win where you're winning. You have to take the central blessing that America has, which is, and the tech companies that are in this space. You also have to tell some of these tech companies, you cannot work in America and with our adversaries. And if you do, we're going to screw you. And so I'm very famous in America. My goal was to be anonymous and have enough money that important people like you would take my call. And so I messed up the anonymous thing, but you're going to have to fix it
for sure.
Yeah. So we're going to force people, some of the people in the room will not like this, to pick sides. You cannot sell to all sides. And that's we have to stop the transfer of this IP to our adversaries. We have to increase the amount of spending in the US DoD, and we have to make sure that spending actually goes to where it works. And I'll say something that many of my colleagues, the hawkish colleagues, will not like. In software, it does not matter how much you spend. It matters who got the money and did it work. So I realize I'd love every European.
That's a big point. In software, it does not matter how much you spend. It matters who got the money and did it work. We're going to be talking about that as well.
Country to do 2% of GDP. I'd be even happier if 2% of GDP was actually going to things that worked, just like I'd be super happy if we really focused on that in America.
You mentioned Israel. You want the corporate world to be much more vocal.
Well, I want two things. First of all, the corporate world has set a standard by and large that they speak out on moral things. Okay, if you're going to speak out on grasshoppers and in every form, I'm against discrimination. I'm obviously would like a green friendly environment. If you have a precedent of speaking up, and then the one issue of our time, you somehow say you don't have an opinion. By the way, I think Israel has every right to defend itself. You might disagree, but saying you have no opinion after you've had an opinion on every other issue, you look like an idiot. And no wonder no one believes you. You've obviously been lying about every other issue. I know a lot of these people, they don't believe in a lot of the stuff they're saying.
This is the part where he starts to go off.
And they'll tell you in 2 seconds in private. You can't say on this issue you have no opinion. You can say, hey, KARP is crazy. Palantir shouldn't provide the best weapons in the world. Yeah, everyone has an opinion. But to say you have no opinion, and then, there's all these discussions now. Let's increase trust. Okay, if you're obviously lying all the time, and you're obviously saying you have opinions that make no sense all the time, and then you obviously don't have an opinion on something that actually matters, why would anyone trust you? You think people are dumb? You don't think they notice that you don't believe the things you're saying? And this is corrupting every institution in the West. And I would tell my friends they're like, now, if you've been in business and you've said for the last 20 years, I have no opinion, I only care about making money, bless your soul. You don't have to have an opinion on this. But if you've been having an opinion on every other thing, and suddenly you can't say anything about, I don't know, like on October 8th, and there's like anti-Semitism rampant, and you have no opinion, bless your soul when people think you are an idiot or you're a liar. And that's just how it is. And I'm telling everyone, you think you're safe by pretending you don't have an opinion where you do, and pretending you do have an opinion where you don't. It's not a safe position because no one believes it. And by the way, you will see that the institutions you represent get worse people. Of course, and then how are you going to go to your employees and just flat out lie to them? But you think you're going to get good employees? You think Palantir over a 20-year period has gotten the best people. And I don't think there's any dispute about that. Silicon Valley hated me. You know why they hated me? The circus cult leader KARP is marching people away from cockroach.com to helping the US government be superior. Why would he do that? It's terrible. He should be supporting us. And you know what? They say the same. They're happy because, I don't know, they have to pretend that they're pro-West, but because I've beaten them over the head, or at least they can't pretend that they're on the other side. But in any case,
dude, he is going off. We have a lot to talk about after this, but oh my goodness, I've never seen him go off like this publicly.
We still get the best people. We retain the best people by and large. Many of the best companies in the world that have been built are ex-Palantirian. Some of them are in the room. Of course, you made a huge mistake and it's going to cost you a lot financially, but that's your decision. And
now he's going off about selling the stock too early. I mean, this is just an absolutely incredible performance right now by KARP.
Oh no, it's true, but you can't. There's a expression in philosophy. It's called a performative contradiction. So if you say you're a relativist, you say all cultures are equal, including fascists and whatever. Yes, but then you criticize someone. There's the performative contradiction of pretending you have no opinion or only opinions that make no sense, obviously, and then not having an opinion on these issues. You just look like an idiot, and your institution will fail. And you see this everywhere in the West.
We finish always with one fun thing. Today, one fit thing. Alex, the last time you and I talked on stage, you were obsessed with cross-country skiing, VO2 max, use of oxygen during a workout. One of the best Axios finish lines ever in its interview with Alex on Run Like a Snail. What's your current fitness obsession?
Well, so I have this new theory that it's basically viewed as true by that if you can take your VO2 max to the highest quadrant in the quadrant below you, that is the most important thing you can do for your health. So I have a theory that if you increase your muscle mass, and my VO2 max is like elite for a 25-year-old, but if I go to elite for a 20-year-old, I lose muscle mass. I think for brain health, it's much better to be slightly older from a VO2 max and increase muscle mass. And that's where you get the optimal VO2 max brain health. And that's what I would encourage everyone in this room to think about.
And how do you get that?
You spend 3 years working on VO2 max, but it's very hard because you have to be incredibly disciplined to stay in zone 1 and do very technical interviews. You can look at how to do this. Just copy the Norwegians. They have the best. I mean, so you just, and then about 2 years in, you want to start doing real strength training. So not the strength training you do when you're single and you want to not be single or be multiple single, but actually making your muscles stronger and more flexible. And that's like bands and body weight exercises.
Okay. We're gonna just end it there because that's good stuff. I don't even know what the hell VO2 max is, so I'll put that on the list. That's something I got to research. All right, folks, we got a lot to talk about. We have a lot to talk about. This was one of the best interviews I've seen by Alex Karp. The CNBC one was really good. He expanded more on this one. 184 people. Thank you all for being here. Give me 15 minutes and let me break this all down because there's a lot of stuff I want to highlight and a lot of stuff that I think is important to discuss. So let's go right here and let's do a breakdown. Okay, high level thoughts. Number one, I think after seeing this interview, Karp is becoming incredibly confident about the trajectory of business growth for Palantir. Why do I say this? You don't talk about the things he talks about, and I have a list of them, and we're going to talk all about them, without having business growth. I mean, you can't be growing at sub 20%, in my opinion, and be this arrogant and cocky. And even if Q4 comes in at a slight beat, right? $604 million of revenue. I think they got it for 602. And I think they're at that 18-19% year-over-year growth. All that matters in Q4 is guidance for the future. If guidance is really good, then growth is going to be really good. And it seems like the way Karp is talking, that growth is at least reasonable. Even if it's not fantastic, it's definitely not bad, given how he's talking like this. So that's the high level thing I want to say. Now, let's get into his comments one by one. I'll start with the small stuff first, then we'll get into the big stuff. Number one, he says, Palantir is a cult, and that is a good thing. I 1000% agree with him. If you don't have a cult around your company, it is very hard to get people to be excited. Palantir is one of the most unique, and in Karp's words, eclectic companies that exist on the planet. There is a reason why people want to consume content around Palantir. There's a reason why people want to invest in Palantir. There's a reason why there's so much attention around Palantir. And you can't convince me that the attention is just because people want to make money. Like, yes, everyone wants to make money. The question becomes, why are people following the company as closely as they are? And, you know, if you combine Twitter and YouTube, I would imagine there's a couple million people daily that actually care about the company, or checking updates, or looking, you know, for different information. You put in Reddit there. So there is a cult around Palantir, and that's not just in the retail investing base, that's also in the employees. And I think Karp's argument is the reason we retain these high-level employees is because we've created such a unique cult, such a unique fire within our employees that they actually give a crap about the company, and they don't want to work to Google. I had lunch with a Palantir employee about a month ago, and he told me he laughs at the engineers that work at Google. This is like a 10x level engineer. I mean, this is an engineer who's very, very good at his job. And he's like, we laugh at Google employees because, yeah, you're making like 100 or 200 grand more than us, but you're working on optimizing clicks for advertising. Like, what type of fucking life is that, right? Like not only is Palantir stock-based compensation going to be way better because the stock's 40 billion, Google's at 2 trillion, but it's like, why would you want to do that with your life versus like protecting the West and making sure democracy doesn't fall apart? Like, you could say that's a shitty vision or a cool vision. I think a lot of people have bought in that it's a unique vision to try to strive for, and it's an axiom. It's a self-identified truth that should not be broken down, whereas advertising really isn't. So from that perspective, I think his argument around cults makes a lot of sense, and it's a good argument to talk about. If you're just joining, we're breaking down the Karp interview that we just saw from Axios. The next argument, he says, we have a terrible sales force, but we need to grow and rebuild the company given how much demand exists for our U.S. commercial product. This was very interesting for what he said about this. It was pretty incredible. The idea that you have a terrible sales force, meaning you're publicly admitting, look, we suck at sales, and it's been 22 years and we haven't been able to not suck at sales, but our U.S. commercial product is growing so much, there's so much demand that we need to rebuild the company. When someone says something like that publicly, I think that means that AIP is working. It's growing. Karp said in a previous interview like a week ago that he's seeing more demand for this than he could ever imagine. It's unprecedented. And that they don't need a sales force. If you were subscribed to the Daily Palantir newsletter, I think it's in the description, dailypalantir.substack.com. On yesterday's edition, at the end of the newsletter, we talked about a screenshot from LinkedIn where Accenture hosted a Palantir AIP bootcamp for 100 attendees. And that was really enlightening to me because I was like, in India, they're having AIP boot camps. Like, I didn't know this was happening internationally. It's happening internationally. It's happening in partnership with their consulting firms like Accenture that are conducting it for them. So I do think AIP is scaling, and his argument that we have a terrible sales force, but we're growing, that to me signifies that product-led growth is real, that product-led growth is happening, and that if product-led growth is the future, then this is a company that's really in a prime position because you don't need to have like 1,000 people, searching LinkedIn names for CTOs and trying to get them on the phone and take them to dinners and like convince them to buy the software, because the software actually effing works. And if we just show you it after 5 days, yeah, we're not going to convert everyone that comes to the boot camps, but a significant percentage higher than the percentage we would convert on dinners is going to convert. And that is why you could have a terrible sales force, but you can still grow the business. And he seems pretty confident that they're going to grow the business. I mean, it would be funny if we grow at like 40% this year and then we CAGR from 2021 to 2025 at 30%, which is what he promised 5 years ago or 3 years ago. It would be just a classic KARP thing to do, just like they did on GAAP profitability. So really interesting to see what happens there. And it makes sense that even without the sales force, the growth is still happening. Okay, next quote. He says, I would rather have crazy politics and higher GDP growth than low GDP growth and not crazy politics. I think this makes a lot of sense. At the end of the day, the economy is the epicenter and the foundational basis for how a society interacts. Like a poor society is not going to have as good of a world as a rich society, even if the wealth inequality between the rich and the poor is strong, which is why KARP is a card-carrying progressive, because he still believes in trying to alleviate the pain of wealth inequality. You still need to have wealth that is being created, right? If you don't have wealth that is being created, you don't have a society. And at 26 years old, I've come to the conclusion that my assumption when I was 15 that we need to tax the rich and Bill Gates needs to give all of his money, which I thought at 15 years old, that has fundamentally changed 11 years later. I do not believe that anymore, because I believe that Bill Gates, not the best example, but someone like Bill Gates has created a lot of value for the world in terms of the companies he started, and it creates a lot of wealth as a byproduct of his idea and his concepts because of the jobs and the services that it creates. That is an ideal. That is an axiom that we have to protect. In America, if Bill Gates had failed, he would have a chance to start something else, because we reward failure. We reward innovation. We reward risk-taking. That is something that cannot be ignored. It is very unique to America. Other countries embrace it, but not to the extent that America embraces it. So his argument here is that if we need to have GDP growth to be to higher, then we also need to make sure that our politics aren't ridiculously crazy, but it's better that if you have to pick between the two, you had one versus the other. Palantir's argument is like, well, if we can try to reduce some of the geopolitical turmoil while increasing GDP growth, then maybe that's a reason why other NATO countries should adopt software like Palantir. Okay. Let's talk about the $60 billion comment. So he says AI is getting to the point where companies like him, enterprise software companies, should be able to reach $60 billion. He publicly stated that the market cap right now is 35 to 40 billion, and he thinks that it can most likely get to 60 billion, which is obviously a doubling of the stock. I think top line growth would have to increase for that doubling to happen. And the fun thing is, and we're seeing this right now with NVIDIA, right? NVIDIA at 575 today. NVIDIA was stuck in the 480s to 500s for a very long time. Once it got beyond like 515, the market was like, okay, this is the new normal, and we'll just give it a better premium, right? Like nothing happened over the past 2 weeks for NVIDIA to go up 17%. Like nothing happened. They announced some new products, which are good products, probably going to help their growth. Yeah, they have some China revenue coming in. I know that helped. But 17% on an $800 billion company in 9 days is like, it's not supposed to happen, especially when there's not a bull run in the market. The S&P is like flat basically over that time. So the point I'm trying to make is when Palantir gets to the $60 billion mark, it's going to be a normal thing for them to be worth $60 billion. You're probably not going to see them come back down to $30 billion, which means you will have to have people who buy in at 60 hoping for it to get to 120 for their double. If you bought in at 30, you kind of already doubled. And so I think his argument here is that the compounding nature of how AI is continuing to grow, and not only how it's continuing to grow, but how it's continuing to permeate into the very essence of how enterprises enable and operationalize software, means it's the same Dan Ives argument, to be honest. It's the argument is that companies are going to need a platform, and they're either going to go with Microsoft, Google, Palantir, Snowflake, MongoDB, etc. All of them do a lot of different things. But Dan Ives' point is like, if Palantir's up on that list, and like they have a chance to make a lot of money because they have a chance to grab a lot of clients. So this argument about the market cap, to me, I simply think he was trying to say that we are an AI company that is going to work. I saw an analyst on the Schwab network the other day. I talked about this on the Morning Open, and the analyst, they asked him why he's investing in Palantir. This guy had no fucking clue what Palantir was, dude. But he was just like, well, we think of at a $35 billion market cap, they are good at AI, and we want to have, exposure to these companies. They're very innovative. They're changing the world. Like, this guy cannot tell you what Foundry or AIP was, but he bought the stock for his clients. Why? Because they're in AI. That's really all that matters to him. He's just looking for the return, and he just needs to know, is this a good company enough to get the return in AI? There will be millions of those, not only retail investors, but institutional investors that have the exact same logic as him. These guys spend billions of dollars on research and none of them know what the fuck they're doing. They're just going to buy companies that actually have some level of exposure to what they need. Like Microsoft's at almost $400. Does Microsoft deserve to be 3 trillion? Probably not. But a lot of these analysts are like, well, AI, co-pilots, open AI, boom. Like that's our thesis. And like, we're going to pile it in and then it just compounds on itself. I think KARP thinks the same shit is going to happen to Palantir and it's not going to stop at 60 billion. But it needs to happen, which brings us into the point of why he was talking about startups. The interviewer was like, well, should people go work at these new like AI startups? And KARP's point is like, no. Essentially, he just said, think very carefully about them because his argument is that not only are the LLMs a commodity, but the purpose and value of these companies are a commodity. For example, there are a variety. Luke, for instance, says what public companies are providing AI to consumers. Here's a company for you guys, Jenny.ai, JENNI.ai. This is a research-based AI company that helps you write essays. So if you're in college and you're trying to get your PhD or you're just in classes in high school, you can write an essay and this thing uses GPT-4 along with their tweaks of GPT-4. Basically, it's a GPT wrapper startup, but they're doing like 2 million in annual recurring revenue. I mean, they're making a decent amount of money. I think they scaled to like 1 million users and paying $20 a month. They have a lot of people that are paying for this product because it helps them do like writing via AI. That is a consumer-based product that's using AI. Now, if I'm a 10x engineer, do I want to work for a startup like that? Even if that startup, has, I don't know, it's worth, I think they raised at 10 million. Let's say they sell for like, I don't even know what they sell, maybe 20, 30 million, maybe it's a 2-3x, whatever it is. Maybe it becomes a unicorn. Who knows? That would be an astronomical return. But the odds and probability of working for a startup that just uses OpenAI's API, tweaks it a little bit, great UI, great product, not a bad product, but at the end of the day, it's just GPT integrated into their, wrapper around it. Do you want to work there or do you want to work at Palantir? If you're a 10x engineer, if you have the optionality to basically be courted to anywhere you want to go, you want to go to Google and work on ads, you want to go to Meta and help, divide people for the election in 2024, or do you want to go to Palantir and protect Western values and build some of the most unique software that's helping enterprises actually operationalize all of their data? Like the choice is very clear. So KARP's argument about AI startups is that a lot of them are going to go out of business. Not a lot of them are going to work. They're going to have some fancy vision that's not going to be actualized. We've been doing this for 20 years. And because we've been doing this for 20 years, we actually know what the hell AI is. And so you might as well work at Palantir. So I think his argument here is simply around this idea that, yeah, we're going to get to 60 billion because there's going to be so much demand for AI that a lot of these AI startups, when they don't work, the market's going to be like, where the fuck do we put our money? And it's going to be in companies that are not at trillions of dollars of valuation, which is Palantir. And that's, whether you like it or not, that is the premium. And I think that is a story that is going to play out as long as Palantir can execute the growth. And that's why I'm very bullish, for their future as well. Persian Prince says, not everyone wants to dedicate their life to their company cults. That is true. Not everyone does. But if you really think about it, most of your life is spent at work. I mean, all of us are adults here in the chat, right? Like all of us work for a living. Either we have our own business, we have our, like your life is spent at work. It is an honor and a privilege to work at a place or start your own thing and enjoy what you're doing every day. And it's not like you're going to enjoy every little part of it every day, but like the fact that you don't hate yourself in the morning for going to work, for doing what you're doing, that's very important. And I think even if you create a cult-like atmosphere that it gives people purpose, that is what I think humanity is in decline of right now, purpose. And that really has come with the decline of religion, and it gets into a lot of other issues, but we are all looking for purpose. And if a company can give you the purpose and you can make money from that company, and you can go to work enjoying the fact that you're at that company, then I think that is a worthwhile mission. I think that's the job of a business leader and CEO, is to make their employees feel like they have a purpose working at their company while doing that profitably. That is my belief. And if that's the case, then I think KARP is on that mission to do so. Okay, China. He said, how do we work with China? He says, number one, we have to spend more. I think this makes a lot of sense. I mean, he sounds like a broken record, but I think you have to keep saying this message over and over and over again. If we do not spend more money, we are not going to be able to beat China when it comes to the race for AI. We need to be able to spend more money in order to be able to beat, win against China, particularly in software. So his argument here is, two things. Number one, we need to spend more money from the DoD. Just even 1% better budgeting in AI will lead us to be able to compete with China, because China's already working on their own OpenAI. I mean, like if you just Google it, there's plenty of articles documenting what they are trying to do, and they're not going to be using it to protect democracy, not the Communist Party. And then he says, we need to be black or white about companies not working with China. I also agree with this, Fruit in his slip says, people say Shapiro talks fast. I'll take that as a compliment. We also really, I mean, look, this makes a lot of sense. Google gave up the Project Maven contract, which was using AI in drone-based targeting for $229 million, and Palantir took it up. I think if you YouTube Palantir 229 million Google emit, you'll find the video I did on that in 2022. Now, why did they do that? They got a backlash from the employees who work at Google, the ones that for some reason didn't get their caramel latte in the morning. It was delayed by 30 minutes from Starbucks on their Uber Eats to the office. So those employees got really mad that day, and so they went on Twitter, they went on Glassdoor, and they were like, Google can't take up this contract. It's so unethical. I will never work at Google if they do this. And because of the lack of caramel lattes that these $500,000 employees had that day, Google basically decided, you know what? Maybe we can't take up a $229 million contract protecting the United States government because, some of our employees got pissed off, and we need to make sure that, they enjoy their caramel lattes. Palantir came up and said, fuck that. We're going to take this contract. And not only did they take that contract, they proved that they were worthy of that contract. And this is KARP's argument about criticizing companies like Google and other these big tech firms that are trying to get into China. I mean, Google is doing so many different things in order to expand in China. Why? Because there's 1 billion people there and they want to be able to generate more growth and opportunities and all of this stuff. Palantir's made it very clear. You either sell to our adversaries and you don't. And look, I get the business argument people make to me. It was like, well, people in China, deserve to have products and services, and companies need to expand their growth. So if Disney wants to make a movie and put it in China, and maybe they have to censor a couple words because the CCP doesn't like it, or Netflix has to blah, 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 then they should be able to expand. That's fine. The problem is, at what point does America also do the same thing to China? We allow TikTok here. We are fine with TikTok, even though, there's a host of reasons we probably shouldn't be fine with that. It is not a reciprocal relationship, is my point. China has banned Facebook. China has banned YouTube, right? China has banned Google, obviously. China has banned so many different products from having access to their 1.3 billion people because they don't play by the same rules. So why should we try to enable them with AI? That's why, Biden's saying, hey, NVIDIA, you really can't sell these chips there because you're enabling the enemy to have better superpowers to be able to do things that they want to do. People say, oh, that's such a confrontational thing to say that they're the enemy. Xi Jinping is talking about uniting, quote unquote, with Taiwan. Like, if that's not the enemy, and you know what uniting means, that means invading them. If that's not an enemy, I don't know what an enemy is. And there's I think I said this on Facebook once, and I got some pushback from people in high school that were commenting like, oh, well, they're communists and all this. I'm just like, dude, shut the fuck up, dude. Like, you have no idea what the hell you're talking about right now. Yeah, invading Taiwan is great because the Communist Party wants to make sure everyone is living well together. Like, it makes no sense. That's why China's economy is in the gutter right now, not only because of all the restrictions they've had on a lot of their companies. Tencent fell $43 billion in valuation because they said people can't log on to play their video games 2 times a day, but also because of the real estate problem they're having and the youth unemployment. All of these things are leading to a decline in China writ large, and that means they're going to try to make sure their economy and their people are united, which might lead to an invasion of Taiwan. All KARP is saying is that, hey, we probably shouldn't be giving software to those people. We probably shouldn't be on our knees trying to make sure these people are satisfied in the name of shareholder returns, because at some level, there has to be a line that is drawn. At some level, if the CCP starts doing ridiculous, egregious things, and we have all of our business and operations there, which, by the way, 95% of all of our U.S. supply chains are in China, then that's an issue. And that changes everything. So I think KARP is making a very clear argument that all these tech companies want to work with our adversaries. They don't want to protect Western values, but they want to lecture us about what we should believe and should not believe. And his argument is like, it should be black and white. You should either believe in these values or should not believe in these values, but don't try to bullshit your way out of saying what you believe or what you don't believe in. Okay, next thing he talked about, software. It's not about how much money you spend. It's about, did it work and who did it go to? I think he's right on with this as well. I mean, look, at the end of the day, software is not about how much money you spend. It's about, does it work? And I've been using a couple of different software platforms, just playing around and tweaking with stuff. I will gladly pay more for something that works. Like I'm paying a subscription to some software I'm using for $60 a month. If they charge me $120 a month and it worked even better, because right now I'm having some problems with it and it's really annoying, I would pay the $120. It's not about how much money you spend. It's, does this shit work? And that's been KARP's entire argument around sales. It's like, he said this on the earnings call for third party. He's like, people will pay us because it will work. So that's why when the analysts are like, well, you don't have a monetization strategy. He's like, I don't care about a monetization strategy. I just want our product to work and be 15,000 times better than whatever the hell, the cockroach.coms of the world are going to offer, that people are begging to pay us because it's that good. And we saw that clip. Remember that South Korean gentleman, I think at the previous Davos in 2022 that or 2023, that came up to KARP and asked him a question about like, hey, I want to, procure your software. And KARP was like, speak to me after the conference. Like there are people that want the software. There are people that want to pay, but they need to actually make it work. I mean, companies, it just saves them more money if it actually works without having so many bugs. So from that perspective, I think he's right. And that speaks to AIP monetization. If it works, they'll make money. If it doesn't work, they won't make money. And that's another reason I'm so damn bullish on this company. I mean, like, you have to have a lot of balls to say, don't pay me if it doesn't work. I will waste all my time, my forward deployed engineers, my resources, my shareholder capital, my stock-based compensation to try to build you something that works. And if it doesn't work after 6 months, you don't have to pay us a dime. It's like 100% money back guaranteed offer with the understanding that you're going to pay us the money. The amount of balls. So let me tell you guys a quick story. I had a friend named Adagoke. We were at a debate tournament at Berkeley, California. This was 2015. I was a junior. He was a senior. I lost in the double octafinal round, the round of 32. Adagoke ended up going all the way to finals. There was a team from Texas. The school in Texas was called Green Hill. Green Hill, private school, cost like $40,000 a year to attend. We had a little bit of a rivalry with Green Hill. I went to Newark Science in Newark, New Jersey. It was a public school. And so in the debate round in Octos, I had already lost, so I was supporting my friend Adagoke, and he had to debate one of the stars from Green Hill. This is a guy who had been consistently whooping Adagoke's ass the whole year. So Adagoke just, before a round starts, you have to flip a coin to see if you're going to be affirmative or negative. Two sides of the debate, affirmative or negative. There's 3 judges. So you have to win at least 2 of the judges to move on to octafinals, quarterfinals, semis, all that stuff. So before octafinals, we get an hour of prep. And I'm talking to him. I'm like, yo, you're going against the Green Hill kid. Like, what are you thinking? Right. And he says, I have an idea. Okay. He says he has an idea. And I'm like, oh boy, I have no idea what he's going to do. Usually you have to flip a coin, heads or tails. And if you pick heads, you get to pick affirmative. If you pick tails, you like, if he said heads and the coin landed on heads, he would get to pick what side he wants to be. Why do you get to pick what side? Because it definitely influences how you're going to debate. Maybe you're more comfortable on the affirmative side versus the negative side when it comes to different arguments. That year, the topic was the United States should force employers to pay a living wage. That was the topic we were debating. Okay, so he says, I have an idea. I'm like, all right, what's the idea? He's like, come with me. We go up to the Green Hill kid, the superstar, like one of the best debaters in the country. We go up to him. This is at University of California, Berkeley, 2015. This is the tournament. And the kid is like, all right, let's flip the coin. Adagoke looks him dead in the face. He says, you can pick what side you want. And the kid's like, what do you mean? We have to flip a coin. And he's like, no, you can pick what side. And the kid's coach is there. And the kid's coach gets up and he's like, no, like, let's flip a coin. We got to flip a coin. That's like the tournament rules. And he was like, I'm going to win either way. So I really don't care what side you pick. And the kid's face drops. He could not believe that if this is a very high level tournament, very important round, that Adagoke just told him, yeah, I'm going to whoop your ass whether you win or lose. So, or whether you're affirmative, negative. So pick your side. And it kind of mentally fucked up that kid going into the round. The guy picked affirmative. He picked negative. Adagoke was affirmative. 3-0 decision, clapped him. And then Adagoke goes on to the final round of the whole tournament. And so the reason I bring up that story is because KARP is basically Adagoke. Ryan Evers with the big balls comment. I mean, that is basically what KARP is doing. He's saying, I'm going to build the best software regardless of what you want to pay me. You will pay me a lot because once you see how valuable it is, you will not leave. So you can use it for free for the next 6-7 months. Take 12 months and use it. You're eventually going to pay me in 3 months because you're going to want to set up a contract. And so you can have fun with it. And when Adagoke did that, it taught me a lesson as I was growing older about what it means to have real confidence. Real confidence is you are so prepared on either the affirmative or negative side of the debate that you don't really care. Like you just don't care what all of the external factors, all of the idiosyncratic things that are happening. You just know how to execute and get results. And so you're going to win either way. I think that's exactly what KARP is saying when it comes to did the software actually work? Not just about the money you want to spend on it. Okay. Final thing I want to talk about. First, before I talk about that final thing, what he talks about at the end about performative contradictions, that is an argument that I actually used a lot in debate. It's a term in academic literature that a lot of people bring into debate because debate is filled with this academic stuff. And performative contradictions are basically saying something but doing the opposite. So you could get your opponent into like a little bit of a double bind, which is like a unique argument around how they fundamentally contradict the nature of two arguments they make. And it's performative because they're acting as if they're doing this, but then they're not really doing this. So let me give you an example in a debate round. There were people that would used to critique capitalism when I did debate. And my performative contradiction against them, and I was one of those people because you have to play both sides of the argument, right? So you do all this stuff in debate. The argument against those people in those debates was, yeah, but your laptop is a MacBook. And you're telling me that, the affirmative is a bad idea because the affirmative is capitalist, but then you're reading off of a laptop. And I would walk them down these questions, which is why I think I'm getting good at interviewing, because I think I know how to like ask questions in a good way. I'd be like, so where'd you get the laptop from? And they would be like, why the fuck is this guy asking me about my laptop? Like, I just read an argument. And I was like, so where'd you get your laptop from? It has nothing to do with their speech. They just talked for 6 minutes. I'm like, where'd you get your laptop from? They're like, oh, Best Buy. I'm like, oh, interesting. How much was the laptop? $1,500. Like, oh, interesting. How much do you think it cost Apple to make the laptop? They're like, I don't know. It's like, well, I think it costs Apple about, $700. So you have a nice little $800 margin. If that laptop was created by, people in China for 50 cents an hour, and you're using that laptop right now to make the argument you're trying to make about criticizing capitalism, ironically off Microsoft Word, which is another company, on your laptop, you don't think that's a little contradictory? And then they would just be stuck. They wouldn't have anything to say. It would be a big W from that judge, because at that moment, it would be really easy to win that argument, even though there is an answer to that argument. There's a way to wiggle out of that argument. That's how I wiggled out the argument when I was on the other side. But the way I asked it made it really hard for people to get out of it, because performatively, they just look bad. So KARP is talking about performative contradictions in the context of CEOs trying to lecture you and I. This is what I talked about on today's Daily Palantir episode on what is good and what is not good for humanity. So this goes into the Israel discussion. Okay. You can disagree with KARP on his stance on Israel. You are allowed to do that. You are allowed to sell your shares of Palantir if you disagree on Palantir's public stance on Israel. You are allowed to do that. KARP's argument is not that you have to agree with me on Israel, even though he would hope you would agree and understand his logic. His argument is, I'm willing to say something. Now, the person today, starts questioning him about like social issues and all that stuff. And his argument, this is where he's going off, is that other CEOs have, for the past 5 years, really as this wokeism movement has become more mainstream, have said, you need to believe in trans rights, you need to believe in BLM, Me Too, you need to believe that white people are inundated with privilege, even though there's a ton of white people that are dying because of drugs and that a lot of them are poor in rural areas. But you need to believe all these ideas. You need to believe, the gay pride flag. You have to accept these ideologies as axiomatic truths. And KARP's like, well, all those CEOs that have been saying this, all the Amazons of the world that'll put up a gay pride flag, all of these people, if you only cared about shareholder returns for the past 5 years and you never took a public stance, so be it. You don't have to take a public stance on Israel and Palestine. But if you took public stances on other issues, how the fuck are you not taking a public stance on one of the most barbaric terror attacks that we have seen in the past 100 years? Now, if you disagree that it was a terrorist attack, I don't know what to tell you. And maybe you need to do a little bit more research on what happened. And I think there are legitimate amounts of people. I even got a comment on one of my videos today saying, well, it was only 1,200 people that died. So it was like these are the type of comments I was getting on some of the videos. And there's no response I can have, because okay, there's just no way we can, agree to disagree on that. But there's just, all right, you can stay where you want to stay. I can disagree with some of the ways the Israeli government is operating. I cannot disagree in good faith with someone who says this was a terrorist attack. So KARP's argument is, whether you agree or disagree with Israel, there was a terrorist attack and it was absolutely barbaric. And children were, parents were killed in front of their children, and then the children were killed. And to not have a stance on something like that, I mean, people have a stance of, like one person dies in America in a way that is perceived as unjust. People have a stance on that. And for good reason. You should have a stance on that. I mean, and a lot of times CEOs talk about that. They probably should at least say something about that, because they have a diverse employee workforce and like their employees want to hear from them, things like that. But when you don't take a stance on this because you're afraid of the backlash it's going to cause from the Harvard groups that believe that Israel shouldn't even have a right to exist, KARP's argument is, you have to have an opinion, and you do have an opinion. And in private, your opinion is that Israel actually does have a right to exist, and they do have a right to defend themselves. But in public, you're not willing to say that because of the backlash, which begs the question. That means all the shit you've been saying for 5 years has been BS. You don't believe in that stuff. You don't believe in BLM. You don't believe in the Me Too. You don't believe in any of it because you put out your public statements without worrying about the backlash, because if there was no substantial backlash, maybe a tiny amount of backlash, but if there wasn't a substantial amount, you knew the business would be able to operate. But on this, if you think there's some backlash when there's actually something to lose, which is the whole point of like standing up for something, because you actually have something. When you say something that's controversial that people are going to disagree with, and they maybe don't start buying your product or your stock because they disagree with you, which is what's happening to Palantir to an extent, that is when actual things, that's when actually saying things matter in the real world. And so you can disagree with Karp's public stance. I agree with his overall opinion that the reason people don't trust the elite is because no one believes them. No one believes them. Dude, no one believes Zuckerberg. Zuckerberg's buying a fucking bunker in Hawaii. Like, why? Like, no one believes he's doing it for whatever reason he says he's doing it for. Everyone's like, what does this guy know that the world doesn't know? Because Zuck says, unfortunately, I mean, dude, the guy is just, he's lied a lot. He's lied a lot about we don't steal your data. He's lied a lot about Cambridge Analytica. He's just lied a lot. The stock's done really well, but he's lied a lot. Bill Gates lied a lot. Fauci, you know, and it's not to say my political affiliation or not, but the general public has heard mistruths or misinformation from corporate elite. And that corporate elite now is trying to tell them what to believe or what to not believe. But on something like Israel, they don't want to have a stance. So Karp's argument is, how do you believe people in a meaningful way if they are never going to actually say what they believe? One of the reasons I think Donald Trump is popular is because he actually believes what he says in certain moments. Has he lied a ton? Yes. I'm not saying Trump has not lied, and obviously all politicians lie, but at some level, he'll just blurt shit out. Like when he called it the China virus, you know, a lot of people felt it was disrespectful. A lot of people felt it was discriminatory, and they have those arguments, and those arguments are valid. But Trump at that moment said, yeah, it's a virus that came from China. It's a China virus. And there's also a lot of relatability in the just pure like 5th grade level of communication that Trump made, that Trump's talking about, right? When you say something like that. So whether you like it or not, you have to be personable. And Karp's argument is that none of these CEOs are personable. None of them are real. None of them actually believe in the shit they're saying. They're just saying the shit to get likes and clicks on their press statements, but they don't actually believe. And it begs the question, why? Why don't they believe? Because they don't think they're going to get backlash. For something like Israel, when something's actually important, you will get backlash, which is why you stop talking. So it begs the question, why is Palantir talking? Because they actually believe in these issues. You can disagree with what they believe in, but you can't disagree with the authenticity of them actually believing it. And as a shareholder, I had to ask myself a question today. Like, do I honestly and authentically believe that Karp is publicly supporting Israel because he wants to stand up and make sure something like a Holocaust never happens again? And he genuinely feels that anti-Semitism is on the rise, and he feels that he's in a unique state where, again, the guy's an economic progressive. Most economic progressives do not agree with Netanyahu's administration. And I'm sure Karp really does not agree with a lot of things they're doing either. But he does believe in defending Israel's right to exist as a democracy, as one of the only democracies in the Middle East, as one of the only places where, you know, I'm being hyperbolic here, but if you are gay, you're not immediately going to get your head stoned. You know, all the queers for Palestine, it's very funny because if you're openly queer in Palestine, you're not queer in Palestine, you're dead in Palestine. And so Karp's argument here is like, well, if there's a part of the Middle East that's actually not going to kill you because you're gay, maybe we should try to protect them, even if we don't disagree with everything that they're saying. And his argument about CEOs not taking a public stance is that's why you can't trust them. And it makes me want to at least trust Alex Karp a lot more than some of these other people. So, yeah, that's my breakdown of this interview. Epic 15-minute interview. How long did we go on the breakdown? We went 30 minutes on the breakdown. Okay, so we doubled the amount of time that we spent on the interview on the breakdown. Look, I thought it was a good interview. I thought he said a lot of stuff, and he talked about the business, talked about a lot of philosophical issues, and he also ultimately talked about how they're going to continue to grow into becoming one of the companies that we think they can become. All right, that's it. Thank you guys for listening and watching. I'll be back on Finance Junkies at 9 p.m. live. And that's it for me. Hope you guys enjoyed. Fun Palantir Deep Dives episode. Like and subscribe if you're not liking and subscribe. Also, let me do one quick plug. I am launching a new channel. It's called Macro Darts. It's going to be all my macroeconomic thoughts and analyses. So the analysis I just did on Palantir, if I can hopefully be as good as analyzing the macro economy that same way, maybe the channel is worth subscribing to. So I would subscribe. Give the videos a chance over the next coming weeks. If you don't like it, unsubscribe. If you like it here and there, then stay subscribed. The Meet Kevin interview I have is launching tomorrow on this channel at 10 a.m. And he talked about Palantir, and he's very bullish on Palantir. So it was a fun interview. We talked about a lot of other stocks as well. So please make sure to subscribe to that and check it out on that channel. Can I make a background for that site? It looks like shit. Macrodarts.com is a very bare bones website. We just started it, trying to grow up the Twitter account. The goal is just macroeconomic news, very quickly, bite size. I have a lot of plans to expand in the future, but for now, that's pretty much it. And I just decided over the past week, yo, let's do a YouTube channel as well. And let's like analyze the macro in video if we're doing it via text on the website as well. Okay, that's it. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one. Finance Junkies, 9 p.m. Hope you guys enjoyed. And I will see you tomorrow, 8:45 a.m. on the Market Open. Enjoy. Bye, everybody. Thank you.